Council. As you can see, I lost the bet. I've got the Sioux Greyhounds jersey on. I have to wear it to start the meeting and then tweet a picture back to Mayor Provenzano. It was pretty nice of him to send his own personal jersey down, and I hope soon to be able to return the flavor and send the attack jersey back up there one of these years. So I've done it. I've started the meeting, and if you just give me a second, I'll get on with my life. Council met this afternoon at 5:30 at the Billy Bishop Home for a special meeting for a nice tour through it. It's well displayed. They've got some great Billy Bishop things there worth seeing, and some events coming up this summer and this June that are worth going to. So I'm reporting on that special meeting, not out of the closed session. Additional business. Council or staff first? Anything? No? Okay, Council? Anyone additional? Councillor Lemon?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have some information about a public meeting, which I will be happy to explain in full.
Good, thank you. Councillor Thomas?
Yes, Your Worship, I have one item on the Festival of Northern Lights Trivia Night, which is coming up this Saturday.
And anyone else? No? Okay, and I'll have a few items to report on things that I've attended in the last couple of weeks. Disclosure pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Anyone? Seeing none. Number 6, confirmation of council minutes from April 23rd.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 23rd, 2018, as printed, be adopted.
All in favor? That is carried. Motion to move council into committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that City Council now move into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports from city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business.
Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. So we're now in committee of the whole. We have no public meetings at number 8. Number 9, we have deputations. This is one of our favorite nights of the year. It's when we honor our volunteer of the year. So I'm going to go down to the other podium. Councillor McManaman, do you want to join me? Councillor McManaman is the chair of the Community Services Committee, and it's that committee that gets to make these decisions every year. So we welcome all guests, family, and friends to the 2018 Volunteer of the Year Award presentation. Our Volunteer of the Year Award is something we present annually. However, this is the first year we will recognize a Youth Volunteer of the Year for those 21 and under. So it's really exciting to see young people getting recognized for the work that they do as well. The work of volunteers in our city is truly remarkable, and we are fortunate to be able to recognize 2 special people here tonight. Volunteers provide their time, their wisdom, and a helping hand, all while expecting very little in return. First one that we'll start off with tonight is recognizing our Youth Volunteer of the Year, Naya Way. If you want to come up. Naya is a grade 12 student at Owen Sound District Secondary School. She was nominated for this award by the Owen Sound and North Grey Union Public Library, right there, where she has spent the last 3 years as a volunteer assisting with a variety of programs for children and adults. Naya is a busy person. Also spends time volunteering with the Chinese culture and heritage classes, as well as Cineplex Galaxy Cinemas, the community day here in Owen Sound. With schoolwork and social life that goes hand in hand with being a teenager, volunteering in any capacity is very impressive. But Naya, you have certainly gone above and beyond. On behalf of Council, please join Councillor McManaman and I in congratulating and thanking Naya on being named the Owen Sound 2018 Youth Volunteer of the Year. You've started a direction that I'm sure will carry you through the rest of your life. Congratulations.
Certificate from the city for you. One from our member provincial president, and a little gift for you as well.
Thank you.
So we'll give those all to you.
Maybe look
Oh,
that
they
way.
wanna-
Oh, look at all the...
Maybe we all better look.
You get to speak.
Are people done with pictures? Okay. I guess first of all, I'd really like to thank the council and Councillor McManaman, obviously, and Mayor Ian Boddy for this this opportunity, and I really appreciate being seen and recognized as a volunteer who does a lot. And I'd also really like to thank the library and Nadia for letting me have all these opportunities to volunteer, and of course all of the other places I've volunteered, which are numerous that I will not try and name. So yeah, just thank you to everybody, and I'm really glad to be here today, and yeah, thank you.
I failed to mention there's also certificates there from MPP Bill Walker and our MP Larry Miller, who were unable to attend tonight. Now, for a Volunteer of the Year recipient, who's no stranger to volunteerism, I would like to welcome Carol Parsons and invite her to please come up. For over 25 years, Carol has volunteered with Summerfolk. Well, that's impressive. Summerfolk is one of our premier events in Owen Sound and in Ontario, frankly. Carol certainly has a large hand in making Summerfolk everything that it is. Correct me if I'm missing anything. Shuttling instruments, serving, liaising in Backstage Cafe, coordinating the wonderful food and drink vendors, security, administrative work, and now the co-chair since 2012, performing a variety of duties as the festival co-chair. Have I missed anything?
I think I worked in the beer tent, too.
Beer tent, too.
Front gate security.
Worked or volunteered?
Volunteered.
I'm sure it's impossible to capture every mark that you have left on Summerfolk, but I know the board, staff, and patrons of Georgian Bay Folk Society are very happy that you're involved. I also want to point out that you're the recipient of the Volunteer of the Year Award from Festivals and Events Ontario. And on top of that, you find time, and probably more time even, is what you were telling me before, providing your resources to Grace and the Owen Sound Animal Shelter. So thank you very much. It's a very deserving award on behalf of Council and Councillor McManaman. We also have gifts for you, sorry, and from Mr. Walker, Vanna White.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
And we have some certificates for you, one from the city, one from the province, one from the federal government, and also a little thank you certificates.
Wow. Thank you so much.
It's all for you.
We'll turn that way.
Thank
and
you.
Camera time.
Hey.
Good.
Thank you.
You get to speak.
Okay. Wow. I would like to thank everyone here at the Councillor McManaman, all the other councillors, and I know I'm knocking the mic. Oh, dear. I am not used to speaking in front of a microphone, but I would also like to thank Roxanne Davidson for nominating me, and our Summerfolk family, Georgian Bay Folk Society, Renee at the Owen Sound Animal Shelter, and Betty and everyone at the Grace Program. I started out thinking that I could contribute something to the community by volunteering in a lot of different ways, and it was me who received a lot more. And I know from my experiences of volunteering in other areas, like in the Grace Program, to bring inclusivity into our Summerfolk Festival so everyone feels welcome. I think that's been really, really important. And as I say, I want to thank everyone. Owen Sound is a wonderful city, and it's truly an honor to be recognized with this award. Thank you.
So tonight we've seen a small glimpse of the greater good in our community. Naya and her peers are volunteering and making a difference at a young age. And we recognize Carol tonight, deservedly so. But we also want to acknowledge and make note that there's an awful lot of volunteers in our community, and that's what makes Owen Sound special, is all the different things that people are involved with, from minor sports to culture to churches to, there's just so much that makes us what we are. So to Naya and Carol, along with your friends and family, we thank you so much for being here tonight, and congratulations. Thanks, Councillor McManaman. So number 10 is public question period. If anyone has a question, we'll get you to step up, state your name, where you live, and push the little red button so that the light comes on.
Liz Zetlin. I'm chair of the Owen Sound Water Watchers here on their behalf, and I live in Owen Sound. It's an unexpected pleasure to be here again. I'm here to refer to the item in your agenda package 11A, a letter from the Water Watchers that was addressing the mayor's concerns, a summary of the mayor's concerns about banning plastic water bottles in city facilities. And what I would like to ask is, having reviewed that, are there still concerns?
I think, just so we understand, there's a process that the clerk will be explaining to us that we go through, and we'll have the discussion of that after the initial vote. We note that everyone received your information, and it's been read by everyone.
So just to be clear then, does that mean that there should be no further questions at this time?
Well, I don't know what the other questions are, so it's hard to answer. However, we have received it. We can't get into the discussion. I think I kind of sent you a note explaining that there's policy that we've got to go through. We will consider more of that information if it is to be opened up for reconsideration.
Okay, so I guess our questions are about the concerns that council has.
Yes.
So in that case, you're saying we should wait for the further time?
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, if council chooses to reconsider the issue that was decided in October, then council will determine at that point who they want to hear, what they want to hear. But I can acknowledge that we received your note that is in the package. Council has read it, they've considered it, and I'm sure it's in the back of everyone's mind when they consider, make the decision that they'll make.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thanks. Any other questions? Seeing none. Next is number 11, which is correspondence which council is required to review, and it is correspondence from Liz that was just at the microphone there, on behalf of the Owen Sound Water Watchers with request to reconsider motion respecting plastic water bottles. I wonder, Ms. Bloomfield, if maybe I should go to you now, and you can explain the process so everyone understands it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Under item 16, there is a motion listed for which notice was previously given. As council already made a decision on October 17th. When this happens, our procedural bylaw provides advice on what needs to take place. And in this case, we need to have a motion to reconsider, and that requires a 2/3 vote of the whole number of council to pass, which is 6 members. So before we can get into a debate on the motion that was previously given, we need to have a motion to reconsider the matter. So if council's looking to debate this now, then we should have that motion to reconsider. But if you're wanting to just receive this for information purposes, then we can move on to the next item of the agenda.
Choice right now with the correspondence is to receive it or to table it until after we deal with the procedural decision then?
Yes, we could postpone it, correct.
Okay, good, thank you. Council, what do you want to do? Councilor McManaman?
Motion to receive the correspondence.
Okay. I guess that opens it up. We can consider it at any time. Discussion on that motion? All in favor? That is carried. So the correspondence is received onto the record. Next on the agenda is number 12, reports of city staff, starting with 12A from Councillor, you've been demoted. From Ms. Allen, Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a report to award the tender to Blue Water Landscaping for the paving of the parking lot extension at the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center. They were the lowest bid out of 5 bids. Paving the parking lot was anticipated 6 years ago, and in the interim, the city has been contributing through the operating budget $50,000 a year into a reserve. The total, the low bid plus the expected additional costs associated with engineering are over budget on this project. However, anticipating that that may be the case, the city did contribute an additional $50,000 to the reserve in 2018, and so long as we're able to do the same thing again in the 2019 budget, that should fund almost all of the overage. As well as speaking with the YMCA, they are prepared to fund their half of the overage as well, provided that we're able to front-end that funding, and then they would pay it back over the next 2 years.
Councillor Kepke.
I'll move the recommendation contained in the report.
Okay, discussion. Councillor Gregg.
Thanks, Mayor Byte. My question is, when we first looked at the site, the design plan, it was extremely elaborate, and the first thing that jumped out was it was going to be an exorbitant task doing for snow removal on the property. We're already considerably over budget or have increased our budget for snow removal. What's been done, because this new revised plan has never came back to operations for any feedback. There was one letter at the time from a resident along 15th Street, but without it coming back to operations for feedback, what's been done here in the changes to kind of scale this back that we can be made aware of?
Go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, I haven't been dealing in detail with the revised plan. Engineering's been working on that. I'd have to look back at the motion from Operations Committee, but it was my understanding that the plan was approved and it was tendered last year. We didn't award it because it was significantly over budget. Mr. Paquette, I know, has had meetings with the city manager, and they have made revisions to the plan, both the landscaping, the amount of curbing, the width of sidewalks, some of the pedestrian paths, the link to the north towards St. Mary's School was changed to asphalt from pavement, so there have been some changes in the plan, but I didn't understand that it was to go back to committee.
Okay. Councillor McManaman, sorry, lost your hand there, were you?
Thank you. Just it's more of a statement than a question. When this, when the building opened, the Y and the city committed to putting $50,000 a year each into a capital reserve towards this parking lot. And I'm not, this is more of a statement than I guess is a question. It certainly at the time was the city's intention that this reserve fund would, of course, budget time is always a time that anything in the budget can change, but the plan would be that the capital reserve fund would continue, that $50,000 a year would continue. And I'm just, I guess, if it could be raised, I guess, at the next meeting with the joint meetings we have, just to ensure that initial plan in 29, I'm going to say, 2010, is still the plan moving forward. I would just hate, if we've both been setting aside an amount in a capital reserve for the parking lot, that's great, and we've detailed how that'll be paid in the next few years, but above and beyond that, I'm talking longer term. I think it's important to have in a joint building like that, to have a joint capital reserve fund being set aside by both partners, because, after the parking lot, it'll always be something else. So if that could just be raised at the next meeting, joint meeting with the Y, just to ensure that that is still the plan.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Lemon?
Has this revised plan gone to the accessibility committee? I don't believe it has either.
Through you, Your Worship, that was one thing I did check before tonight, and the Accessibility Committee was invited, and I'm going to say it was the July meeting of the Operations Committee. They were invited to attend, I understand.
That's 2017.
That's right.
But the changes occurred after that, did they not?
Yeah, the changes, there's nothing in the changes that would affect the accessibility. The parking, the accessible parking meets the city standard. The parking lot is well lit. There's a clear pedestrian path from the north doors of the YMCA through the parking area as was contemplated by the committee.
Okay, and it has not gotten back to operations for approval.
I don't know why it would. Deputy Mayor Wright?
Yeah, when this plan went out for the first time and it came back, the costs were extremely high. And at the time, we were told, and rightly so, that it was a very busy time of the year. The contractors that would be doing the jobs were all too busy to really do it, and hence had put in extremely high prices. So that's why we, at operations, we said, well, we'll sit back for a year and we'll wait, and then we'll tender it again and say, so there were not a lot of changes made. There was some, as Pam and as our director has said, there's some concrete became blacktop, et cetera, but there weren't a lot of changes, but it was the timing of the tendering that was really worked well for us, and operations at that time did not expect it to come back. We just expected there'd be some minor changes and it would go back out to tender earlier this year to see if we could get somebody to do the job cheaper. That was my understanding of the situation.
And you were chair of the committee. Yeah. Go ahead.
I am looking at the minutes from July from 2017, and there was a public meeting and a presentation about the parking lot. There was nothing that asked for it to come back, but there was also nothing that sort of, approved it formally, and I'm only looking at one set of minutes, so I don't want to leave council with the wrong impression.
Okay. Anything further? Seeing none, going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Opposed? That was in favor? Okay. Just wanted to make sure. 12B, Ms. Coulter. Maybe Ms. Allen will answer all your questions for you.
Here's hoping. Thank you, Worship. The federal government has announced an intake for the Enabling Accessibility Grant, and this is for a mid-sized project. The city was a recipient, I think, in 2011 for 2013 for a small-sized project. So the mid-size category, the minimum grant is $350,000 to a maximum of $1 million, which means the minimum project cost is $550,000. The grant process includes a call for concept due by May 24th. We would be notified of a decision in the fall of 2018. We would then be invited to submit a full project proposal in the fall with an anticipated start in the spring of 2019. So this report really does three things. Looks at a project that staff are recommending council consider applying for, looks at a partnership with the Kiwanis Club of Owen Sound, and also just generally at the capital budget. The 2018 Parks, Recs, and Facilities Master Plan supports strategic partnerships and has a goal to ensure facilities and services are accessible. The master plan recommends that we review the detailed Parks Master Plan, and the Harrison Park Plan from 2002 has had significant accomplishments. However, the tot lot and the campground playground remain as outstanding items. Accessible playgrounds promote integration, independence, and inclusion for people of all ages and abilities, and build on the success of the 2011 Kiwanis Harrison Park Playground. There's two attachments with the report, and it shows both the area of the tot lot, which is right adjacent to the inn and restaurant, and the second campground, that's the one on the screen. And then if we go to the next one, it's the small campground just below the area of the pool. So in this area, we've made that washroom and shower immediately proximate to that campground playground accessible, and as council's aware, the pool and change house will be made fully accessible. So staff are recommending, we did look at a number of capital projects. We looked at the requirements of the grant, and this is a project that we feel we can recommend to you, and it is best aligned with the requirements of the federal grant. In terms of the partnership with Kiwanis, Kiwanis is a global organization that are committed to changing the world one child at a time, and they have a mission of bringing safe play to children in communities. The Kiwanis Club of Owen Sound has had a huge impact on Owen Sound, everything from the Kiwanis Skate and Bike Park, the Kiwanis Soccer Complex, the Harrison Park Accessible Playground, the list goes on and on. The city has a history of successful partnerships with the Kiwanis Club. We met with Don Sweetman, the Kiwanis president, in April to talk about potential next partnerships with the Kiwanis. And things that the city was planning to do that were also aligned with the Kiwanis mandate. So we talked about a variety of projects, and the Kiwanis Club supports in principle a partnership with the city on these two playgrounds and leveraging the city and Kiwanis support with this grant application. If council approves the report tonight, the partnership with Kiwanis would be more formally developed in the months to come. In terms of financial and budget implications, it's estimated that the project would cost approximately $600,000 to $650,000 for both playgrounds. That would, so assuming we were successful, the federal grant would be $390,000, with the city and Kiwanis both contributing $105,000. If we didn't, if we aren't successful in getting the grant, we would certainly have to revisit the financial arrangement. So the recommendation is that council support an application to the Government of Canada Enabling Accessibility Fund for mid-sized projects for Harrison Park Tot Lot and Campground Playground, that you approve in principle a partnership on this capital project with the Kiwanis Club of Owen Sound, and request staff work with the Kiwanis to formalize this partnership, and that an amount be brought forward in the 2019 capital budget for consideration, depending on grant funding, to be considered as part of the overall capital program. So I want to emphasize, this is not pre-budget approval. If council decided that not to include this project in the capital budget, even if we got the grant, there would be no commitment to move forward.
Good, thank you. Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Worship. This is a very exciting opportunity, I think, both for the City of Owen Sound and the Kiwanis Club of Owen Sound. Taking advantage of this grant opportunity is not only, just by using some past numbers, is not only of opening up availability for two playgrounds in Harrison Park to meet those needs of individuals to make it completely accessible. One of the more exciting parts that I thought is if we did get this grant opportunity, $300,000 goes a long way. That's basically getting a park for free. The partnership, which what we've looked at our past numbers before between Ryerson Park and what we've done on the north side of the Kiwanis accessible playground as well, is that we're seeing those numbers being around that $350,000. So if we can get a federal or provincial grant to actually provide us with one accessible playground that is going to be utilized by our younger individuals that are going to be more primarily focused on some younger children, which will be a little bit different from our northern lot, and as well get the accessible playground down by the campground, I think is a very exciting opportunity for both partners. So I'd be more than happy to move that recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Other discussion? Councillor Kapke?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to speak in favor of that. Harrison Park is certainly a jewel in Owen Sound, and it seems to me like all the stars are lining up for this. We've got a willing partner in the Kiwanis Club. We have a grant opportunity. Why not? I think it's great that we hopefully are able to do this, especially in light of providing more accessible access to young children in this area. And Harrison Park needs an upgrade there, so thanks.
Good, thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Thanks, Mayor. My one question is regarding this. For the last 3 years, we've had it as a $100,000 line item in the capital budget in the 5-year plan. Can this or should this be worded somehow that moving forward, if we were not to get that grant, but we were to come up with a design plan of something in the area of $300,000 or $400,000 that's much more than what we had originally budgeted at $100,000 for those 5 years, and we've got $25,000 or $26,000 budgeted for the Bayview playground on 5th Avenue East, but just keeping in mind that should we not get those funds from the program, that the future council is not looking at something now that's in front of them at $200,000 to the taxpayer, when previous to this it was a $100,000 line item in the budget. So I'm just wondering how that maybe or should that be done as a concern moving forward.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
I think item 3 in the motion addresses that, Your Worship, that the amount be brought forward in the 2019 capital budget for consideration, dependent on the grant funding, to be considered as a part of the overall capital program. So I'm in support of the motion as it stands. I think we've already addressed, and you know what budget time is like, everything's on the table one way or the other in any case.
Anyone else? Councillor Lemon?
Well, over the years, one of the concerns that some of us have had is that part of the playgrounds at Harrison Park and other parts of the city have become very tired and worn out. And the photograph we saw earlier that was on the screen is an indication of that. The thing is that the more accessible you make it, the more it's going to get used. The more it gets used, that's good news for the people of Owen Sound and visitors alike, and also would be more of a draw to the city. But the most important thing is our own people. We have children in Owen Sound who are profoundly disabled, and allowing them to have a place to play and not be forgotten makes the whole project worthwhile, and I will support.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 12C, Environmental Superintendent, Ms. Allen, you presenting that one?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an annual partnership agreement. It allows us to extend this waste management program to our neighbors, including the Township of Chatsworth, Municipality of Meaford, Township of Georgian Bluffs, Municipality of Grey Highlands, and the Municipality of West Grey, without adding an additional financial burden to the city taxpayer. And I believe the clerk is going to put up, here we have the Household Hazardous Waste Program and the days that that is taking place in 2018.
Ms. Allen, you may not know, Brianna, you may know, are those dates available on our website so somebody can come and check? And
They absolutely are.
Good, thank you. Okay, Councillor Gregg?
I was up there on Saturday past and disposed of some fluorescent light bulbs, so I would be glad to move the recommendation as it's laid out before us.
Okay, anyone else? Call the question, all in favor? That is carried. So 12D, report from Director of Corporate Services with regard to Connecting Links program.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a report asking that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with the Minister of Transportation for the Connecting Link program intended to fund the replacement of the 10th Street Bridge. The city is eligible and has been approved for the maximum amount of the grant of $3 million. This is against a total estimated budget around $7 million. The work is expected to take place sometime in the time between 2019 and 2021. And these grant funds will be transferred upon the time that we have achieved 90% funding through the program. The difference in the amount to be raised will be covered or is anticipated, I suppose, to be covered through setting aside federal gas tax monies between now and when the project is undertaken, as well as debenture through any mature debt room that opens up between now and when that project is completed.
Councillor Lemon?
Yes, Your Worship. This is a must-do project, and I would move the recommendation.
Okay, any discussion, any questions? Seeing none, I guess we've talked about this for a while now. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Staff for the reports. Deputy Mayor Wright, anything to report from County Council?
I do have just a small report. One project that might be of interest to this community, and it should be an interest to this community, is the county has become involved in Project SAVE, that's situational awareness of vulnerable population during an emergency. So what will happen is that there will be available to the EMS under e-services, anybody in the community that requires oxygen, anybody that has special needs, that they require assistance. If there is an emergency, the EMS will be able to tap right into that person and provide whatever it is they need. So that it's a great service, and there's a number of areas across Canada that have joined together to promote this, and Grey County is one of the projects. So we're quite pleased with that. Just two other little pieces of information. As we approved at the last meeting, the tender for Grey Road 15, so the county will be paying their share of fixing this road out here. So
Third Avenue East then?
3rd Avenue East is actually County Road 15. And we also approved the tender for Grey Road 1, which is 2nd Avenue West. And Grey will be paying their share of that. So that's just two little tidbits. That's it.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Consent agenda number 13.
Through you, Your Worship, on the consent agenda this evening is a report from the Facilities Booking Coordinator respecting the Sarasota Circus at the Bayshore Community Center, and there are comments on a planning notice from Georgian Bluffs. There are minutes for receipt from the Library Board, Police Board, and the Maritime Memorial of the Upper Lakes Committee. Lastly, there is correspondence received, which is presented for the information of council. A full listing is available at 13F.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kapke.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself that City Council receives item 13A to 13F on the consent agenda dated May 7, 2018, and further that the recommendations contained in Report 13A be approved.
Good, thank you. All in favor? Oops, time out. Go ahead.
I have a question on 13A, Your Worship, the Sarasota Circus. That is actually scheduled for a regular council evening, and I'm just wondering where we'll be meeting June 11th.
Sometimes our meetings are a bit of a circus.
Yes, we do.
Except this one will have tigers and bigger animals than...
Well,
So,
We have those.
Ms. Bloomfield, have you contemplated that, or is there any thought?
Through Your Worship, we will be discussing that later this week.
Okay, so we'll find out. All options will be open. Good question. Okay, I'm going to call the question then. All in favor? And that is carried. If I can come back to 13C, Councillor Thomas, anything to report from the Owen Sound and Grey North Union Public Library?
Actually, I don't have anything tonight, Your Worship. It was probably the shortest library meeting I've ever attended in my 20 years on that board, and the attack game that night may have had something to do with that.
I was going to ask if they got a new chair or something.
Zing!
Good. Thank you. Councillor O'Leary, can you be that brief on Owen Sound Police Board?
I have a couple of items other than the usual statistics. There's a deal in place to make changes to the prisoner transport vehicle schedule. Those changes are significant and will save money in the process. I don't have details on that, but it will save money. Chief Sornberger continues to push for a resolution regarding the courthouse security system, which involves an additional staff member. He is keeping track of days worked and length of shifts. The only timetable we've been given is 2018/2019. And the police services review is well underway. Consultant Joe Levac was in town last week conducting staff interviews. That's all I have, Your Worship. That's pretty short.
Do you want to give a little more information on that video system up at the court? Just that it's...
Just that there's 40 of them and none of them work, and then some of them work part of the time and some of them work not at all.
So police services are putting on extra staff because it has to be safe and maintained. You've got to have real eyes where you can't have a camera, and the cameras are owned by the provincial government in the building, and it's been years, probably now, isn't it?
3 years. 2 years now. They won't give us any information. They have to go through an RFP process to see if it's okay to have an RFP process, to see if it's okay if whatever. It just goes on and on and on.
Councillor Lemon, question, obviously.
Yeah, that's their building, right? They own it.
Yeah.
And that's basic maintenance, I would assume, in a courthouse. Is there no way to put some dynamite under?
We don't have dynamite and courthouse in the same sentence.
Yeah, sorry. Is there not some way to raise a little hell with it, with all due respect?
Well, we sent a letter, and he continues to push after that we sent the letter. It's the same, it's another issue, but the X-ray machine on the way in for security is also on the blink, and that something has to be done with that as well. But it's costing us money because we're using more staff, but we are keeping track of the time spent and the costs, and we expect to get that back.
I just find it, I don't know, this irritates me. I didn't realize that the cameras weren't working. Not that it would have changed my behavior, but...
The building is now a whole bunch of years old, and I can't remember. So they have been fixing the cameras along the way, but the technology has changed. Now they can't get the parts, and they can't get the...
You buy a new camera.
Told, and there's a committee of judges and crowns and defense counsel, et cetera, that meet staff, that meet up there and discuss these things and forward the letter, and they wait. And now it's my understanding that it is going to an RFP, but the RFP can't happen until X amount of time, and then there's a provincial election coming, so all things come to a halt at that moment. So it's frustrating, but yes.
Okay, I just find it unbelievable. If this was us owning the building, you can bet the province would be all over us.
Ms. Coulter, did you have anything to add? I saw you kind of waving.
Your Worship, just in the coming weeks, you'll be thinking about your delegations to AMO, and perhaps if this issue isn't resolved, this is something you could think about for an AMO delegation.
Good, thank you. You're done, yep, good. Next, Councillor Lemon, you have 2 sets of minutes going back to October 17 and then January 25th, 18, Maritime Memorial of Upper Great Lakes Committee. Anything you want to present?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sorry about the delay. That's my fault. And if anyone, but anyway, we're in the process of application for 2 grants. One through the federal government, one through Trillium, and those are mentioned in there. The criteria are such that we have a good chance of getting some money. And as we do the research, more and more is coming to light, the latest of which is that there was a whole boatload of escaped slaves who came here from Michigan, and we know where in Michigan. And this is really exciting because they settled on the First Nations side, I believe, of the Potawatomi River. The boat actually could get up the river. That's before the railway bridge, et cetera, was there. And they came here in the late part of the year. Originally, they were thinking of going to Midland, but when they landed here, weather was too rough, which we all knew about that in the fall, and they were befriended by the First Nations and decided to stay here. And
Councillor Lemon, is
remain
any of
here.
this in your minutes?
Yeah, and not that part, because that came after that last meeting, but it was discussed a little bit. But anyway, everything's moving ahead. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Lemon. I just noticed one of the minutes that's set from January 25th, it just had noted about a potential for something at Ordnance Park, and you're looking for grant funding. So have any of those activities begun, or are those just all relying on those grant funding?
Okay, the site has been submitted to the Community Services Department, and some negotiations will be going on there. The grant application for that is in August. It's a once-a-year grant.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead. You're probably there.
I was there. Just to further clarify that question, there's a motion that project will go forward to Community Services Committee, and you are on it, so you will see it before there's anything further advancing on that project at all.
Excellent. Good. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Number 14, we're down to the committee reports for approval. First one, Councillor Lemon, you're back up. Accessibility Advisory from April 23rd, 2018.
Yes, Your Worship. One of the things which occurred is we had a resignation of one of the persons disabled on the committee, and I'm going to make a motion at the next council meeting that we have, I'm going to call it a spare. In the past, we've looked at having the minimum number of persons with disability on that committee, but if someone leaves, the committee becomes inoperative under the provincial statute. So if we had an extra person with a disability on that committee, if someone left, we wouldn't be in the situation we are right now, because legally the committee cannot meet because of this resignation. And that came up at the last meeting of the accessibility, when we received the information of the resignation.
Okay, I'll wait maybe and come back to notices of motion for that. So with regard to the minutes, April 23rd, was there anything in there that you wanted to bring out, and are you moving them for approval?
Yes, I would move them for approval. I think they're self-explanatory. We dealt with some site plans, and also there was some been lengthy discussion about the at the corners. You'll see these grates that are there. They're tactile, and a person who is blind then knows when they get exactly to the curb face. And I was curious as to how much can you feel these with shoes and everything on, and although I'm sighted, I close my eyes and put my foot down, and it's amazing how different it feels. And so it is another thing to make our community more accessible to more people, which we've been working on for many, many years.
Thank you. Questions, anything to add? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question then, which is for approval of those minutes from April 23rd, 2018. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 14B, Councillor Gregg, Corporate Services.
Thanks, my buddy, and I'll speak to every report except for the wastewater and water rates for 2018-18. I'll pass along to Ms. Allen for further in-depth explanation on that. The committee received a letter requesting or asking us to look at, in Owen Sound, increasing the dog limit. I'm sure almost everyone's probably familiar with it. There's a good write-up in the paper last week as well on it. And we've asked for a report subsequently to come back from staff to further provide insight into the request and what other municipalities are doing along the same lines in terms of dog limits, cat limits, overall pet limits, and so forth. We had a the time management report. It was a very quiet month, only one fire call, and with a loss, that was an automobile. Otherwise, we had 92 hours of overtime for staffing, which is quite a bit for such a quiet month. We had our quarterly financial update, and everything is, it's early in the year, and I would point out that even the snow removal costs associated with the April storms, that's not included. We're tracking kind of normal to that point, but you'll see that in the second quarter. Our bag tag sales continue to be up. You'll remember last year, that was a very big positive for the City of Owen Sound, was bag tag revenue. It continues to be up, and parking ticket revenues have dropped. So staff are looking into potential reasoning as to why parking tickets, the revenue is gone down, and maybe it's good behavior. We're not sure, but it's possible. Staff will give us a little more insight in that in the future as well. We had a very interesting look at our first website traffic and analytics. The website went active last April 5th of 2017. You can see from the information in front of you that 50% of the users access the site on mobile devices, and we had a large uptick, which corresponded with the Festival Canadiana, which was the July 1st festival, as well as the January 11th, 2018 water main break also drew significant usage to the city website. In terms of where our traffic's coming from, it's interesting. Obviously, Owen Sound's our first one, Toronto's second, but Collingwood had 17,000 visits, and I think that's maybe somewhat telling that there's perhaps a lot of tourist traffic or people in Collingwood that are searching the area looking for things to do, because that number jumps right off the pages as kind of extraordinary when compared to the others. So a lot of information in that report for interest sake, and there'll be more coming in the future as further insight gets added on some of the website pages and so forth. We have a report in front of us tonight for the holiday closure of 2018, particularly the Christmas holidays. There was a lot of discussion on this at committee, and just to provide some insight on 2015, 2016, 2017, those years had been consistent, albeit the holidays moving. But in 2015, Thursday the 24th till 1 o'clock, City Hall remained open, and it was closed the 25th, 26th, and the 1st, and the 28th, because Boxing Day was on the weekend. 2016, Christmas was on Sunday, so we were closed the 26th, 27th, and January 2nd due to New Year's being on the Sunday. And 2017, the 25th was on the Monday, so we were closed the 25th, 26th, the 1st. The discussion the committee had looked at, we first looked at being closed completely from December 25th to January 1st. That motion was defeated. A subsequent motion was accepted by committee to close the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, but be open on the 31st, closed again on the 1st, obviously, and the 24th and the 31st, as you can see in the information, City Hall would be open till 4:30 those days. We had council attendance report, which I think is pretty positive for anyone that wants to run again next year. There's not a member that's been absent a dramatic amount of the time, so that was just information for information purposes. We had a housekeeping measure just to change the parameters on a couple deputy clerk positions, and we had a quarterly bylaw update. which in the first quarter of 2018, we had 193 investigations, 31 related to animal control. That was a considerable amount of the overall investigations. And of the investigations launched, most are also property standards, waste management, and snow. Then we have our last report, which is the water and wastewater 2018 rate setting. And I will refer to Ms. Allen for further information for council.
Thank you, Chair. Through your worship, the report recommended three things: leaving the water meter service charge and water consumption charge unchanged, increasing the wastewater surcharge to 117 of the customer's total water charge, and keeping rates for all properties outside of the City of Owen Sound boundaries at double the amounts charged to properties within the boundaries, and those properties generally receive just water. So as a background, we are required every 5 years to complete a financial plan, sustainability plan for our water services, and by choice, we do the same thing for our wastewater services. At that time, we look at our future capital requirements, estimated revenues, and it is recommended through that an annual increase to be applied to the water rates and the wastewater rates. That report was completed the last time in 2015, at which time it was recommended that water revenues needed to increase by 3% a year, while wastewater rates needed to increase by 3.5% a year. So the combined increase that was recommended through that study of both services would be around 3.5%. Looking now at our current operations for water and wastewater, were two charts provided, the first being water, and currently the water department is sitting with net financial assets, so they are in a positive position of just under $1 million. Meanwhile, the wastewater department, has a net financial deficit of just under $20 million. That's not completely unexpected. We did know that we would be in this position for some time as we slowly work towards paying off our major investment in the wastewater treatment plant. However, it is shorter than what the rate study had anticipated. And the reason for that was not because spending was more than expected. It was actually on the financing side. The rate study anticipated higher development charges than where have been received and applied over the first 3 years of the plan. So the recommendation is that we leave water rates the same, but however, give the entire increase to wastewater at 6.5%, so that the average payer is still paying the 3.5% that the study recommended, but it's all going to wastewater as opposed to water and averaging out at 3.5%. And it is estimated that that increase would generate an additional $350,000 of wastewater revenues in the next fiscal year.
Thank you. Any questions for Kate before? Okay. Any questions on this just before we go back to Councillor Gregg? Thank you. It's complicated. Any idea how many hours you put into preparing that report or doing the calculations? Thank you. Go ahead, Scott.
With nothing further for me to add, then I would ask council's acceptance and approval of those minutes.
Okay, now, Councillor Kepke, question?
Thank you, Worship. With all the statistics and information, background information that was provided regarding public and statutory holidays, and I thank the councillor for having all of that information, I'm sure people at home were a little confused on what the actual dates are that we're going to be open or closed. So I just wanted to reiterate that Canada Day will be celebrated on Monday, July 2nd, and City Hall will be closed. Remembrance Day will be celebrated Monday, November 12th. City Hall will be closed. And the Christmas vacation for City Hall will be December 25 to 28, and that will be inclusive, and staff will be using some of their vacation days to cover some of that time off.
Good, thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Gregg, just a quick question on the overtime for the firefighters. You said there was one fire, was there, but not a second alarm? Where did the overtime come from? Maybe that's unfair. You wouldn't know.
No, that question comes up, and most of that overtime is accumulated because of the staffing, minimum staffing policy that's in place of the fire department.
Also, if someone calls in sick, then they have to have the certain number,
Yeah,
and that's the overtime, how many hours?
correct, and it was 92 hours in the month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Call the question. All in favor of approval of those minutes? That is carried. Good job, thanks. 12C, Economic Development, Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. We had a great meeting, actually, when we met on April 20th. We had a deputation presentation from a committee member named Mike Camello, both about the project that he does to kind of give some inspiration to some of the job availabilities that there are in rural centers. Mike, what he does is a senior project manager for basically it's a tech company that looks for efficiencies in the manufacturing sector. So a lot of his clientele are in the Stratford, London, and throughout the United States, but he works out of Annan area. So it was just the showing of that some of these availabilities of technology are up in our region. Mike is a really special individual as well. He also helped create the Grey Bruce Technology Network, which is, he did that about a year ago, and with that, he had a mission to create a group to facilitate networking among technology professionals and encourage growth in the technology sector within Grey and Bruce counties. So that group currently has 71 members. They meet once to two every, my apologies. They meet every month or 2 months at downtown here at KP9 Interactive. So it was really good to hear some of the positives that we were seeing about how the tech sector is available up in our region and how much it's succeeding. We got a report from the Director of Corporate Services, Ms. Kate Allen, regarding something that Councillor Gregg had presented in our Corporate Services minutes in a previous meeting. Once again, this was just to kind of profile to our economic development that sometimes the tax ratios aren't as sexy as some of the other economic development policies that we put in play, but they actually do benefit into economic development in a different way. So because we experienced, was it 1.4, Kate, or was it 1.8% growth? 1.4% growth overall. With that, we were able to manipulate some of the tax ratios, which we do annually, and we were able to reduce the commercial ratio to 1.88, which was a reduction in the commercial ratio tax. We were able to bring down the large industrial tax ratio, which would bring it down to normal industrial, which is also a great benefit to if there are other large industrial opportunities in the future, that brings that closer to coming to our region. And finally, that extra increase of that growth also helped bring down our overall tax levy, which brought it down to 1.08%. So that was a fantastic report. It's good to see members of economic development to see some of the processes that we have and that aren't necessarily economic growth as you would normally think of it, but just the growth of how it's impacting economic growth in the future. Next, we had talked about Savannah Myers was here she's the Grey County Manager of Economic Development. She was there to discuss, yes please, to discuss about the Creative Mixer for the Young Professionals Network that we organized back in March. So these were some of the statistics. This was a nice pamphlet that Savannah had worked on to present both to the Grey County Economic Development Committee and ourselves. So some of these, the stats in here, I did kind of give a sneak peek to before, but I wanted to kind of just go over them again because I think some of these are pretty amazing. So first off, in this pamphlet, we see a quote from Ramped, which is an online website. I met marketing directors, code writers, creative curators, Red Cross workers, barbers, accountants, realtors, speechwriters, musicians, city councilors, and parliamentary research assistants. All of those individuals were at the Hartwood Hall that night, and it was actually a fantastic time for people to network and get to know those other people that are within our county. So some of the other information, the stats that came from that, which were really exciting to see. One right there that says, normally when we think about what's influencing the individuals to move back to our area, we would say it is due to nature, it's due to the quality of life. And we can look here, and on job growth, it was actually 45% from our surveyed participants said they moved here for a job opportunity. 23% said family, and 13% said work-life balance. Another really neat stat that I thought here was the age group. We got 45% of our attendees came from between the ages of 26 to 30. And our next group, obviously, was a close, tight race between 31 and 34 and 35 and 40. But we were able to see a good balance of it. We still got 13% out from our 20 to 25, so that was really exciting to see. Another stat that I had released previously was that there was 60% actually grew up in the Owen Sound region, 40% were from outside of the region. So that's the target that when we were talking about creating some networking opportunities, creating retention. Here are individuals who didn't grow up in Owen Sound, didn't have those family networkings, but this is a group of individuals who are able to come to the area and are here because of an opportunity, and now this is a group of individuals that we can connect with, that hopefully they can plant the roots in the city. So the other part of it was kind of neat. We always put a big emphasis on social media. This social media is the way that gets out a lot of people. This event received 60% of people that attended heard about the event from word of mouth.
It still works.
So it still works, and it was a great experience that people were talking about it. People were spreading that vibe about how great of a success it was. And then finally, I think this is a good stat just for us. Maybe it's because it's in our municipality. 55% of the participants lived in Owen Sound, but 70% work in Owen Sound. So this was, I thought, was a really successful event. We have a working group between Savannah Myers, myself, Kelsey Sutherland from Grey Bruce Regional Health Services, and Amanda Healy from Grey County as well. So we are going on to do our next event that's going to come up in June 21st, I believe is the date. We'll release more information on that, and we're just meeting on Wednesday to finalize some of that information. So overall, that was a great event, so I wanted to highlight that here for council and the public. So our next report that we received was from the Tourism Marketing Coordinator. This was about the Savor Owen Sound event that we host annually. This was done between February 16th to March 31st, and 7 restaurants participated this year, which included Bishop's Landing across the road here at Best Western, Nathaniel's Restaurant, Sabitri's Global Cuisine, which is downtown, which is a great restaurant, Jasmine's Tapas and Taps, Oregano Bistro, which is used to be called Villa Nina's right on 10th Street, which is a great restaurant. Everyone should go check it out because it's really good. The new owners, Elsie's Diner, and Sweetwater Restaurant out at Cobble Beach. This year, the staff took a different approach to marketing this campaign. They did an interactive campaign that urged the public to share and comment on our posts on our online social media. Each week, staff promoted a different restaurant on Facebook, included a feature article about the business on the city's website, and each Facebook post reached a minimum of 7,400 people. So that's pretty good. That's how it stretched out there. And the most popular reached over 44,000. That's even more incredible. Weekly prize, a $50 gift card, was given to the restaurant profiled and was randomly awarded. They sold over 1,100 Savor Owen Sound special meals during that, which is normally during a typically slower part of the year for some of those restaurants. And overall, for a good staff pat on the back, was that the campaign actually only cost $1,644, which is about 50% less than what was spent last year. So I thought that was a great stat to note as well. Further on in the meeting, also Councillor Lemon, which has already broken the news that there was a slave ship that came up from Michigan, also noted that in additional business, but Councillor Lemon will bring that in a further report. So with that, I would move approval of these minutes.
Thank you. Questions? Anyone? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Lemon?
Some of those statistics, excuse me, certainly go against the image of that everybody in Owen Sound is elderly, older. These group of young people, it's fantastic statistic, particularly that the largest group was just over the 20s. When you add that up, I found those statistics fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome, Councillor Lemon. I think that was the big part of most of this that we've been working on for multiple years, is that young individuals are in our community, and I think before they felt like they didn't have a voice, and now they're actually being able to network and kind of get themselves out there. So, and finding partnerships, finding relationships, whether that's business, personal, or pleasure, to move forward and be successful in our region.
It's wonderful.
Good, thank you. Did I call the question? No, okay. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So number 15 is matters that are postponed, and we have none. Number 16 is matters for which notice was previously given, and we have the motion from Councillor Thomas. but we have to go through the first motion, so I hand it over to you.
Actually, Your Worship, I'd be happy to make the first motion. I just have a couple of comments I'd like to make first, if that's
Sure.
okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thanks. Before we can consider my notice of motion, we have to reconsider the motion that was passed by council on October 17th, which implemented a phased-in program to provide access to tap water in city facilities without banning the sale of bottled water. Now, I'll tell you right here and now, because somebody will point it out if I don't, I did vote in favor of that motion at that time. So why am I asking you to reconsider? I think that when we, at our last meeting, looked at the new contract for beverage and snacks that we're awarding to Coke, it was quite clear that we had had a favorable response to the need for healthier snacks and offerings within those machines. I would submit to you that this focus on healthier options and the close proximity of a water filling station, we can easily eliminate water bottles from vending machines in city facilities. Now, notice I said vending machines in city facilities. If the motion to reconsider passes, I'm going to present a motion amended slightly for clarity, which asks for a prohibition on water bottles in vending machines in public facilities with water bottle filling stations. It's been an interesting couple of weeks, and I've heard from people on both sides of this issue since our last meeting, as I know many of you have as well. Why bottled water, some have asked. Juice comes in plastic bottles and so does pop. And I guess what I'd say to that is if we had convenient juice or pop filling stations, I'd be asking for a ban on those products in vending machines as well. But we haven't got those. What we do have and will have soon are water filling stations. With those in place, I can't think of a single reason to justify plastic water bottles in our vending machines.
Councillor Thomas,
Just
you're getting beyond the...
wrapping up, Your Worship. Most arguments against this are about economics or convenience. And as far as I'm concerned, it's economics and convenience that are creating such havoc in our planet. What I'm asking from you for tonight is a very small step, but we have to start with this somewhere. So with that, I would move that City Council reconsider a matter previously decided on by Council respecting bottled water at a city facility as per Resolution Number R 171017-014.
Good, thank you. So, under the procedural bylaw, we can't discuss it at this point. We would discuss it depending on the vote. So we need 6 2/3 majority. So in favor of Richard's, Councillor Thomas's motion to reconsider the previous decision, all in favor? 1, 2. Opposed? Sorry, you caught my eye. Hold on,
Dodd had his hand up at 2.
Okay, I'm going to start over just to be clear. All in favor? 1, 2, 3. Okay, and opposed? I guess it doesn't matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there isn't 6. So we're not reconsidering at this time. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but Ms. Coulter, where are we at with the bottle refill stations?
Through you, Your Worship, 3 water filling stations are being installed in the renovation of City Hall. With the budget that Council allocated during the 2018 capital budget, there's a water filling station in and at Tourism, tried it last week. There's one in at the transit terminal and operating, and the one for this building will be installed later this year. There's also one being planned for the library, being paid by the library, but being installed by city staff. So I think we've made good progress on that capital budget item.
So we've got to start. Good, thank you.
Considering the number of people who go to an attack game, is 1 enough?
Well, we had that whole discussion when we went through budget time and went through it when we made the decision originally. Maybe? Go ahead.
If I'd like to ask through Ms. Coulter, it was my understanding that when we heard that Coke was taking over the contract, that we had the option of marking what went in the machines, right? Yeah, okay, thank you.
I can speak to that just to clarify. So, in most cases, what goes into the machines is determined by the group that has control over them. So in this building, it would be the Owen Sound Attack.
Right.
At the rec center, it would be Buff Bistro. Any other city facilities, we would decide what goes in those machines as city staff.
Right, and if I could just, so the Owen Sound Attack, they could say that there would not be water bottle, or bottled water in the machine, but they can sell it at their concession stands. Water bottles, they do sell water in a bottle at their concession stands.
That's correct.
Yeah, and we're certainly not, I mean, they can go ahead and do that, yeah, thank you.
Good, thank you. So we're down to number 17, discussion of additional business. Councillor Lemon, you had one item.
Yes, Your Worship, I do. Last week, there was the annual meeting of the Community Waterfront Heritage Center. And at that meeting, there was a presentation on the Kiwanis, which sailed from Owen Sound a century and a bit ago. The ship is currently in Port McNicoll, and the gentleman who's responsible for this, working with this ship, gave a fantastic presentation to the people who were there, including a large number of councillors. I'm not sure, I think it was about 6 or 7, which is great. And the question was raised at that meeting about could the Kiwanis come to Owen Sound, and we certainly heard that that was possible. But one of the things that was said, and I was listening carefully, that you need a lot of volunteers to run it if it did come to Owen Sound. It could be revenue neutral to the city, or would be revenue neutral to the city, but that you have to have the volunteers. And so some discussions ensued, and there will be a public meeting at the Legion, and the date will be announced shortly. It's a matter of free time at the Legion that's not already booked, and the availability of the people from the Kiwanis. The presentation certainly well worth seeing, and the meeting would include a presentation on the Kiwanis to bring everybody up to the same level. One of the things that to me was important in that was the video that they had was the Kiwanis passing the Manitoba, which of course was built in Owen Sound just down the way, and it was the first steel ship built in Canada. Others were brought in prior to that, but they were built in Scotland or England and taken across the Atlantic. But in the case of the Kiwanis, a lot of the wood in that ship came from this area. And when she came over, she was an empty hull, and then was brought to Owen Sound because of all the furniture makers that were here. So it tells even more of our story. There's a great deal of information that has to be gone through, but the first step by far is to find out if there's community support. Because if there isn't community support and people who are willing to volunteer, it's not going to work. And we want it to work if it does happen, and we want it to work well. So that public meeting will be open to residents of the city. Council will be advised, as will a number of organizations, including Georgian College generally and the Marine programs specifically, Chamber of Commerce, DIA, and any other group that the CWHC feels are important to be part of this and just see where we are. It sounds like a repeat performance of saving the CWHC, and I guess in a way there's resemblance, but this is a little different project. And that is my other business. I'm not asking for a motion at this time until we have a lot more information, including financials.
Yeah, a lot more. I've read a little bit on it too, and it sounds like it's interesting.
Exactly, but if you don't have that community support, your worship, it ain't going nowhere.
But it might take more than just community support, that's the
Oh,
main
yes,
thing.
oh, yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Councillor Kepke.
Just a question on that issue. This is a project that Community Waterfront Heritage Center is looking into, is that correct?
They wanted they wanted to have a public meeting to see what community support there was before there was a larger commitment, I know that. And the Legion was asked Thursday for the use of the hall, and the Legion is going to supply that at no cost. So there's no cost to anybody involved in this look at public support.
Okay.
So this is not something that you're asking the city to participate in at this time, other than maybe attend the public meeting?
Yes, the idea is we all listen, we hear what people in the community have to say, and I think it's incumbent upon members of council to be there so they'll know what support there is. If 5 outside people, other than those that are invited, show up, it's a dead issue. If 400 show up, it could be alive and well.
Good, thank you.
And has there been a date set for this?
No, it's a matter of free time at the Legion. There hasn't been enough time, and we'll get it out as quickly as possible, and also the availability of the person from the Kiwanis. Those two have to intersect in order to do it.
Thank you. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Just I wanted to clarify if I misunderstood or you misspoke. You said could be revenue neutral to the city. Could you expand on that?
It would not require an operating grant from the city of Owen Sound, nor would the city be asked to purchase the ship in the transfer of funds. They would ask for a tax receipt for the ship. There's several ways it can be done, and that's why I didn't get into it, because one of the models would be the corporation would simply move over here. There's a few other different ways things could be done, but there is revenue that would come to the Kiwanis every year from a trust. And I've seen the financials and the projections.
I think we're going a long way down a trail that we're...
Sounds like we need a lot more.
That we're...
Oh, we do. And this
Just
is...
you'd said revenue neutral to the city, and the city's never said they were involved in anything. That was my point.
Yeah, exactly. They're not asking for, okay, let me clarify. By that, I meant they're not coming to us to ask for, $500,000 a year to operate the ship.
Good, thank you. Councillor Thomas, you weren't covering the same thing we discussed the other night.
No, Your Worship. I just have a quick reminder for those who are interested that the annual Festival of Northern Lights Trivia Night is coming up this Saturday night. It's $100 for a team of 10, and there are prizes for the best costume and the best decorated table, and the first question is at 7 o'clock Saturday night here at the Bayshore Community Center. Thank you.
Thank you. There's probably more information on Facebook or something like that, Festival of Northern Lights?
Absolutely, on their Facebook page or on the website, fonl.ca.
Perfect, thanks. My list of things that I've done over the last couple of weeks, I'll try and go through it quickly because it ended up being fairly long. Spoke to Rotary Club, spoke to Kiwanis Club, I attended the Chamber of Commerce breakfast, which the county, Savannah, presented the county's plans and economic development. A few of us attended the Grey County Wardens Forum, which was a presentation by the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and that's really interesting because they are so attuned to economic development and their place in the economy and helping us understand it. It was really good. Also, presentation from Philly Markowitz on behalf of the county, talking about what the county is doing for supporting agricultural innovation and tourism, and there's a lot going on in the agricultural world right around us that we in the heart of the city don't necessarily see, and we should. Attended the Home and Cottage Expo, which I think was a big success. Attended the Order of Good Cheer fundraiser in the Chichimon last Saturday night for the winter cruise. It was snowing out there on the lake. Really well attended, and it's great seeing the Order of Good Cheer doing well because they support our community so well. We welcomed the first ship into the harbor for 2018. It was the Cayuga, owned by Lower Lakes Towing. It was built in 1943 and is now the oldest laker on the Great Lakes. I forget how many millions they told us. It was just in for a rebuild over the last little while. They unloaded a full load of grain to the elevators from Thunder Bay to here. The engineer on board lives here in Owen Sound, which was kind of cool. Attended a meeting with the board of the Owen Sound Family Health Team to discuss doctor recruitment. And that's something we're going to have to be discussing more going into the future as we try and grow. There's a shortage of doctors again, and we need to be involved in that. Also talked about their goals to provide services to the area, and they are looking for a public member to sit on their board of directors. So that's something for us to think about, who might be good and who we could suggest they contact. Most of us attended the Owen Sound DIA Spring Party on Thursday night. Very well attended, fun event, and it's great for the downtown retailers to get together and take some time and have some discussions and meet each other. And it was also a great showcase for downtown restaurants that provided the food. It was great. Many of us attended the 2018 Owen Sound Sports Hall of Fame. Congratulations to Hap Day was born here. He won captained, coached, or managed 7 Stanley Cups with Toronto Maple Leafs. Patty Davey is a Canadian Toilette champion and then coach and then champion as a coach. Jeff Reed played hockey and lacrosse. We have Olympians Larissa Yerkew and Jason Crone. North Star lacrosse star Joe McRae, childhood idol when I was 8. Builders, Chris Fernando, who started minor lacrosse. Soccer, and then eventually handed it off to the McManaman family, I think. Ray Thompson has been involved in bowling for years and started things like the Bowl for Big Brothers and some of those fundraisers. Mark Berner, after the senior lacrosse team dropped off, he resurrected it and brought it back as the Woodsman. And great speech by granddaughter. Special merit to James Bud Nuttall, who played until he was 84 years old in slow pitch, and I think he had 50 years of playing, and his contribution to slow pitch, and everybody loved him and how he got along with everybody. So it's been a pretty busy couple of weeks. So that's my report. Go ahead.
Do you want to just add that?
Go ahead. Push button.
That the Ontario Chief of the Métis was here in Owen Sound on Saturday, or Sunday afternoon. We met her. There was a fish fry, and
good.
Welcomed her into the city.
Councillor Thomas, some of you attended the art gallery on Friday night while we were at the Sports Hall of Fame. How'd that go?
Your Worship, I was suitably impressed. The Ontario Parks 125 exhibit is spectacular. If you have not seen all of the Tom or Group of 7 works, or many of them, I don't think it's all of them, they are all out now for this exhibit. As well, in the lower gallery, the George Thompson collection is out, and it's well worth dropping in and having a look. And there was a pretty good turnout for the opening. There were about 75 people there.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, motion that the committee rise at number 18.
Moved by myself that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
All in favor? That is carried, so back into formal session, number 19, motion adopting.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations, and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business be confirmed by this council.
All in favor? That is carried. So we're down to number 20, notices of motion. Councillor Lemon, a little bit earlier, you mentioned that you would be bringing a motion at a future meeting, increasing the number of people on accessibility. Did you want to discuss that at accessibility, or do you want to bring that as a notice of motion now?
I bring it as notice of motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I hereby give notice that I will move or cause to be moved a motion at the next regular council meeting to increase the number of disabled persons on the accessibility committee. And it's signed by me and dated today.
Good, thank you. Okay, so then we're down to bylaws.
Through your worship, the bylaws listed for approval on tonight's agenda include the confirmatory bylaw, a bylaw to execute a facility use agreement with the Owen Sound Agricultural Society for the barn dance at Victoria Park, a bylaw to authorize borrowing for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, a bylaw to execute an agreement with the Owen Sound District Market Vendors Association respecting the use of farmers market building and premises, and a bylaw to enact a bylaw diamond maintenance standards policy.
Good, thank you.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that bylaw numbers 2018-058, 059, 060, 061, and 062 be passed and enacted.
So all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So just before I go, I want to again thank Sault Ste. Marie Mayor Provenzano for loaning me his personal jersey, and to London Mayor Brown, who both were pretty good sports, had a bit of fun with regard to hockey, and look forward to next year. So on that, it is now 8:37. We've completed the business for tonight, so we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.